on this computer. Recording's in progress. All right, perfect. And we're here. How you doing, Kristy?
I'm very good, Dexter. Thank you. How are you today?
I am all right. So I have COVID, but I don't have COVID. It's weird.
Oh, no.
So it's like I have no symptoms, but I tested last night and it's still very much positive. So I was like, this is my first time being asymptomatic for something, so it's very odd for me. I'm like, I feel like I could go on a run or something, but like I don't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to risk it. And I'll tell you, the all the different variants, each one of them is unique in
Hmm.
its own way.
Yeah.
So just take it easy on yourself and don't overdo it because you don't want to become symptomatic.
No, that's what I've been doing. I gave some of the same advice because they were the ones who gave it to me. And so
Right.
we had like a nice like staycation the last few days. They finally tested negative
That's awesome.
yeah, yesterday. But I got my symptoms a little bit later, so I'm probably gonna be out of commission for the week. I'm hoping I'll be good by this weekend, but we'll see what happens. So,
Yeah,
so we're here to talk about Rocky.
that's right.
Yes. Um, again, sorry, still working out the kinks on all this.
That's
Um,
okay.
what was your first time seeing Rocky like? Let's start there.
Okay, so the first time I saw Rocky was actually Halloween of oh God, it hurts me to say this. 1979.
What?
I know.
It's
And it was
amazing.
before, yeah, it was before it became the midnight movie phenomenon. They were showing it at University Square Mall Cinema, and Halloween that year was like in the middle of the week. It was like a Wednesday or a Thursday, and there wasn't a lot going on because it was, Wednesday or Thursday. And so they showed it at like 10 o'clock at night. And my friend and I were just we had that earlier that year, we had graduated high school, so we were just 18, and we were just out driving around like you do, or like we did in those days. And we didn't have anything else really to do. So we were like, oh, let's go see this movie. We didn't know anything about it. We went in, there was very few people in the theater. She and I sat there and we were just like mesmerized. We were like, this is the craziest thing we have ever seen. And it was like awesome music, weird to bad acting, but it was just like, wow. And we were both kind of we were very much into alternative stuff. This was, back in the days of punk and early alternative, and Tampa was not that kind of town. Like
Really?
Tampa was a disco town, and it was a heavy metal town. It was not an alternative town. It was not a punk town. You had to really seek and search for that kind of stuff here in Tampa.
Huh.
So she and I were both sort of like, OMG, like this is so flippin' weird. But we thought it was like really great. So it wasn't until a few months later, I think in the spring of 1980, that I heard that it was being shown at midnight at that same cinema, and people were acting it out. So this other friend of mine and I were like, "Oh, we got to go see this." I was like, "You got to go see this. This movie is so weird." But now there are people dressing up and going, and acting it out. And about that time, that the original version of Fame had come out in the theaters, and in the movie Fame, they go to see Rocky Horror in where they have Sal Piro and they have all the original people that get up and dress up. So it was a little more known.
Huh.
So we went, and it was like every Friday and Saturday night at University Cinema, they would show it at midnight, and they had these people up there, and all of a sudden, this movie that I had seen at Halloween that only had, I don't know, half a dozen people in the audience, all of a sudden it was nearly sold out at midnight. And there were these people up in front of the screen dressed like the people on the screen, acting it out, like pantomiming it. And I'm just like, oh my God, what happened? Like, how did this and that was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. You know, I'd been, I had done theater, and I had been performing since I was like 4. So it just like spoke to that piece of me. And it was just like, it was like, wow. And it was this big party and people were yelling and they were throwing things and you could not hear the movie. And people jumping up and dancing, doing the time warp, and they shouted all this, rude stuff. And back in those days, we threw hot dogs and we threw rice and we threw so much rice and water guns to simulate the rain and the toilet paper. I mean, it was a mess, but it was such a enthusiastic and exciting thing. And um, we had such a good time. And then we found out they did it every weekend. So we just started going every weekend.
Yeah.
And so did so many other people because there was, people from high school and people from from USF because it was right in that neighborhood.
Mhm.
And it was just this party you knew you could go to every weekend. And that was kind of the atmosphere. It was like it's a party you knew you could go to, no matter what was going on. People were like, well, let's go to Rocky Horror. And people would just show up. And
Huh.
then we so yeah, it was very it was very transformative in a way, only because it was like there wasn't anything else like it. Like you couldn't talk back to the screen like that. You couldn't throw crap around a theater like that. And it was fun. And to me, it was very punk because that's kind of what, when the few one or two times you could actually find a punk club to go to, that's what it was like being in those clubs, like the bumping into people, like slamming into people, and the yelling and the like cathartic high level energy that
Mhm.
people would have in those clubs. It was like that in Rocky Horror. And then after we kept showing up repeatedly again and again and again and again, we got to be friendly with a couple of people in that cast, because they saw us every weekend, and we got to where we chatted with them. And one of them was a woman who's still around, and then of them is this guy who has since passed on, who went by the name of Orphan. He had a real name, but he told us his name was Orphan. And the two of them kind of just took some time and chatted with us and said, listen, why don't you guys get a costume together and join us? You're here all every week. You may as well be a part, get up and do this with us. It was very casual. Like there was no hierarchy. There wasn't any structure. I don't think the cast really had a leader or a boss or a director. It was very casual. So that's what we did. They didn't have anybody being Transylvanians. So we went out and got sort of Transylvanian costumes and showed up, and they just let us get up there and join them and become part of the cast. It was that easy.
Wow. It's
Yeah, and
amazing.
that's what we did.
That's awesome. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. So you did like the Transylvanian for a little while. Did you find a role that stuck out to you
Well,
eventually?
yeah, I did. I was a Transylvanian, and then I did Magenta for a while.
Oh, I'd love to see you as
Yeah,
Magenta. That'd be dope. What? I could totally see it too. What?
yeah, I really loved doing Magenta. I just her vibe. I really liked her vibe. I did Magenta for a lot. I kind of went back and forth between Magenta and the Transylvanian, and then I did this for about 7 years, off and on. I'm going to say because there were a couple of times when we lost the theater temporarily
Mm.
for different reasons. Um, but yeah, between sorry, my cat's being
Hey.
okay. Um, for it just whatever. At one point they threw us out, and then they brought us back because as soon as they threw us out, they continued to show the movie, but they just had us, the cast, leave. Their attendance went like down. Like nobody wanted to come to the movie if we weren't there.
Makes sense.
So it's from like 1980 till 1987.
Mhm.
There was one point where I did lights too. Um,
I love
but our
lights.
lights were primitive. They were a little everything we did in those days was primitive. We had very few props. We had to really we didn't have the things that the casts have now.
Mhm.
We didn't have people making costumes to sell on Etsy or some of these other places. We didn't have the anal retentive uh, Rocky websites. We didn't have the DVDs or the even a VHS of the movie. We didn't have all of this plethora of information. I remember one night we paid the projectionist a pizza if he would stay after the movie and run the movie for us again, just for the cast, so we could watch it with no noise, with no audience there, because there was a lot of stuff we didn't even hear because there was so much yelling. There were lines we weren't sure what people were saying, the characters were saying. So we actually, like, we didn't know there were birds in the cemetery during but right before Damn It Janet, because you
Wait,
couldn't hear anything.
there's birds?
Yeah, there's birds. Like you can hear these crows cawing. But there were a few lines that got so overrode by the yelling of the audience that you couldn't hear what the characters were saying. So we had to sit there and force ourselves not to do call out lines, just to hear the movie and that and watch it. But we didn't have like we had to sort of guess at the costumes because we couldn't stop the movie and like you can do now.
Had to get them
You
like
have
close
pictures.
enough.
Yeah, yeah, we were like, but we did good. I mean, we did, most everybody did really, really good and got really, really close. And we had to be really creative and we had to do a lot with very little. We, I mean, we had no props. We had this one bench at the theater, and that was everything. The
Oh.
bench was everything. The bench was the car. The bench was the throne. The bench was the tank. The bench was the bed. The bench was the table. The bench was everything.
The
Because that
bench
was
was
the only
gone.
thing that the bench was gone. It was the only thing that the theater would let us have access to. So, and for a long time we had to buy tickets to get in.
What?
Yeah, we had to buy a ticket, and that didn't even guarantee us a seat. It was crazy. It was a lot of crazy stuff. But I'll tell you, the first time I really understood how impactful what we were doing was um, USF, before they kind of redesigned the campus, used to have this swath of land between the admin building and the student center they called it the mall. It's got buildings on it now,
Nice.
but it was this like triangle of land. I'm sorry, rectangle of land.
Mm.
And every Halloween, they would have the student services group would throw a party on that called the Ball on the Mall. They would have bands and they would have, whatever, because there's just this big empty piece of land. And they came
Nice.
over and invited us to come to the Ball on the Mall and perform, just our cast. So we just had audio. We had the audio we did it from when Brad and Janet come to the door
Mhm.
till the end of Sweet Tea. So basically, the beginning of Time Warp to the end of Sweet Tea,
Mhm.
just the audio, obviously no film. And we were there by ourselves in front of the stage. They had this elevated stage for the bands, and they loved it. Like the audience went nuts. And that was, I think, when I finally got that we were really impactful to the movie because
Nice.
people were coming up to us like we had fans. They were fans of the cast. Like they loved us. And we invited people to come back to the show at midnight and we sold out that night and people showed up. I mean, we saw you in USF, we saw you at the ball, and they liked the movie, but they liked us. I mean, you're well aware, I'm sure that because Ricky Garcia has talked about how he had a fan club, and he did.
Yes.
He had an actual fan club, but the whole cast had fans, and that was the first time I remember realizing that the cast had fans, and then getting like really that what we were doing had an impact on the people that were coming to the movie. So it was very cool.
Yeah. Um, what was I say? Would you say that's what kind of kept you coming back to it, or was it just the love of performing as a whole?
A big part of it was the love of performing. The other part of it was that it became like a family. Um, part of the thing with Rocky, and I think this holds true today as well, everybody who was in that first cast in some way or another felt like they didn't belong somewhere. They didn't belong and they felt like an outcast of some type, whether it was their appearance, their size, their sexual orientation, just their poverty level, whatever. They felt like they weren't, if they were in college, maybe they weren't fraternity, sorority material, or they felt like they just didn't fit into the regular part of society. We all just felt like we were misfits. And in fact, one of the girls used to call us the island of misfit toys because we all just seemed to be, square pegs trying to fit into round holes. But at Rocky, we fit. You know, everybody was accepted, everybody had a home, and we all fit. So that's real hard to walk away from when you feel like you don't have anywhere else and you find this home. Plus, you get up there and perform and do this awesome creative thing. That's a really hard thing to walk away from
Yeah, yeah.
because it fulfills something inside of you.
It
you
does.
know it kind of it ignites something inside of you and it fulfills something for you. I mean, obviously here I am, umpity ump years later, I'm still doing this.
Yes.
I did take a very long break. I did take a very, 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 very long break.
Ah,
you know
yeah.
and I left in 87 and I didn't come back to it until 2010, but in all of that time I never forgot about
Uh,
it. Like, it never left me. And I would always, every time I would hear about it, or like, they would show during Halloween when they would like show videos, like spooky videos, and they would show the time warp or something. I would get that, like, oh, God, I remember doing that. I remember doing that. Um, and, when I got the opportunity, I actually uh, took my uh, semi-adult children, my actual children,
mhm.
to see the show at Tampa Picture Show, and then ran into Ricky. And it just, he asked me if I would go do a performance with him for alumni night, and it just kind of struck everything up again.
Oh,
And so I've been back since 2010.
oh, I wonder if I got to see that alumni night, if it was at the picture show.
I
Do
don't
you know
know.
what
It was in June of 2010.
Oh, I definitely was there then. Was Scott Mullins your Frank?
I don't remember. It might have been, what's his name? Um, I don't know. I would actually have to ask Ricky, but we did that. Our pre-show was doing the song Cruel to Be Kind.
Yes. Oh, I was there. Yeah, I was running props that night. Oh my
Yeah, that
goodness.
was that was that. That was me.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I can't. Wow, it's so crazy how things come full circle because I had not even thought about alumni night, and I haven't thought about that night in years. I haven't thought about a lot of that, like picture show time. I remember it's like all one giant happy blur of memories. It's
Yeah.
like, we did so many shows, but it was all
Yeah.
just positive
I,
vibes.
I didn't really I didn't do a lot with the Cheap Little Punks then. I went on and I did a lot of guest performances with interchangeable parts
Hmm.
because Ricky was in both casts.
Yes.
And I was an unofficial cast member of interchangeable parts. And I did a lot of stuff with them. And then I officially joined, well, first I joined Tampa Theater in 2014,
Nice.
and as a Transylvanian. And then I joined Cheap Little Punks in 2017, did MegaCon in 2017, and then did Tampa Theater as Crim for the first time
Yes.
in 2017.
2017 was your first crim? Like ever? But you're so good
Mhm.
at it.
Well, thank you. So I joined Cheap Little Punks um because they rotated
Mm,
all their parts, and they already had two people doing Crim, but they always have yearly auditions.
mhm.
So I auditioned to be a Crim, And the deal was we would the three because there are three crims. The three crims would rotate based on everybody's availability because people have lives and jobs.
Yes.
And then when I wasn't a crim, I would be a Transylvanian. So I would crim or Transylvanian, crim or Transylvanian. Um, and then I auditioned to do crim at MegaCon when we got that, and then promptly broke my shoulder, which was not great because I was at uh, Britain when I broke my shoulder.
Oh my God.
Um, and I was really disappointed because I thought I wasn't going to be able to perform, but I just ended up doing a mobile crim. I just looked very still. Um, and then I wasn't asked to audition, but what was said to me was, we really feel like you did a great job as Crim at MegaCon, and we hope you would consider auditioning for Crim for Tampa Theater.
Oh,
So they just encouraged it. So I did. And so, yeah, I've been doing Crim ever since.
nice. Do you like doing crim? Is that like
I do. Um, I really wanted to do Magenta again, but in 2010 I was in a car accident
oh,
and I have an injury to my back that prevents me from being able to do Magenta because she stands up almost all the time she's on screen.
yes.
So I had to give up. I was doing community theater at the time as well, and I
Mhm.
had to give up doing that
Oh,
because I just could not stay. It's just too much. I can't stand up for very long.
oh, that sucks. I'm
So
sorry.
Crim is perfect because when we were doing weekly shows, Crim was off and on, on and off and on and off and on and off.
Yes.
So that was perfect. And then at Tampa Theater, Crim is sitting at the desk the whole time. So um, gets up for the time warp, but otherwise sits at the desk. And so that's good.
That's
That works
perfect.
well for me.
That's
Um, yeah. And when I thought about it, it's like, there's that kind of, I try to bring in this, like, forgive me for saying this, but like British bitch uh, energy. Like I bring in all of these like strong female. I mean, it's the truth though. Like, these strong female Brits like Helen Mirren and Judi Dench,
Mhm.
and that kind of just I'm the boss energy, and even the character of Missy from Doctor Who, the female master who just had
Yes. That
that
presence.
strength, yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of that British bitch stuff to it because Grim is British,
Hmm.
and I offered to do it in drag. I offered completely to go in drag with the prior director of Cheap Little Punks, who passed away, and he said nope. He said, first of all, not going to work. You're not going to do good in drag. And second, he said, I like the energy. We like the femme creme. So I've offered it with all the subsequent directors. Every director of Tampa Theater, I have offered, I will do this in drag. Nope, we like femme creme. So
Okay.
they sort of like that. And so now they just bring femme creme.
I love it. That's amazing. Awesome. Okay.
But I did
Uh,
offer. And that was important that I offered.
and you offer, yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. At least you're willing to do it. But I like your creme too. I wouldn't change it for the
Thank you.
world.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I have questions. Hold on, I'm getting to them. When so I'm gonna kind I don't want to really like no, I'm not gonna ask that one because you've kind of already answered it. I would like to know like what was like your time on cast like? Like was it like everything you could have hoped for? Were there like highs and lows with it? Was it like just like a blur of like of joy or like yeah, like
It like it's the way it would be anytime that you have a lot of creative people spending way too much time together. Um, I do look back fondly, and I've been in more than one cast.
Mhm.
Um, but the first group that I was with, the UC Players back in the 80s, um, there was there were highs and lows, of course. Um, we spent time together. We were close. Some people there were groups, I would say clumps of people who were closer than others, you know, some of it based on proximity, like
Mhm.
where they lived near each other. Um, and people who had similar interests or whatever. There were a couple of the guys that were real good friends. There were a couple of couples. There were a couple of girls who were best friends. Um, but we used to go out on Sunday nights and go to the drive-in together,
What?
and we'd line our cars up back when you could go to the drive-in, and we'd
Uh,
line our cars up, and we would do other things together as a group. Like we would go out after the movie to breakfast together.
mhm,
We would try to do stuff together.
mhm.
And I still hear from them. I had a birthday on Monday,
Oh, happy
and
birthday.
thank you. But I mean, I actually had a birthday message on Facebook from one of the guys who was in the cast back in that time. So there's still a connection even after all these years. Some of these folks have since, passed on and they're not with us any longer. Like good number of them have passed on,
Mhm.
but we're still connected to some of us are still connected. We still are in each other's lives. So to me, that speaks a lot.
Yeah.
That really does speak a lot. We, some of them I was very close with, and unfortunately, either they've left the area, maybe like moved away or passed away. And the same thing when I got back into it in 2010. Well, obviously, I'm close with Ricky, but even in 2010, I mean, some of the people from IP, there was okay, there was people were very close. I've gone to people's weddings. We've gone to funerals for a couple who lost their baby. You're in each other's lives.
Yeah.
And just like any community, which I think it is a community,
Yeah.
there's going to be these great times and these less than great times. And there's going to be, um, highs and lows. And it's life. And
Yes.
I think it's the stuff of which life is made. I was I was very grateful when they came up with the idea of the alumni picnic because that's, to get a bunch of people back together who haven't
Yes.
seen each other in a long time, um, but who still want to be connected to each other.
Mhm.
Because sometimes life takes us in these divergent places. We come people come on cast, they stick around, they hang out for a bit, and then they have different destinies. Like they have jobs that take them places, or they have um, not career, but artistic aspirations. Like they decide they want to do different career things that take them other places, or they want to travel, or they want to just go to a different part of the country. And that's terrific. That's amazing. But they still want to have that touch point with people in the cast.
Yeah.
And it's like you never really quite want to say goodbye to any of this community because really does touch people.
Does. I don't personally think I would be the same person if I didn't have Rocky Horror in my life at all. And it's very hard for me to imagine what that would be like because it's so intrinsic to like everything that I've become as a person. Um,
Oh, I definitely agree.
yeah.
I'm one of those people who will say that I really feel like Rocky saved my life in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. And that's kind of like what I've been trying to kind of that's what I've kind of been hoping to get from like doing these interviews is like that like thing where like for me it was all that's it. I wouldn't say it definitely yeah, it definitely saved my life. It definitely saved me from being going down like a path of like isolation and solitude and not feeling really accepted because at the time I just had a lot of places where I didn't feel like I was welcomed on like
Yeah.
a more than surface level and being able to actually have people who interact with me who actually cared about like what I was in like what I had going on in life and even outside of like doing the actual show like made me feel so much more accepted than I could have probably ever gotten anywhere else.
I think that there are people who come on to the cast, any cast, and they're excited to be there. excuse me, and they're excited to perform and they think it's cool and they think it's fun. And I call them guests because they're really not invested in the community. And I keep going back to calling it a community.
No, I couldn't
And
agree more. It is a
there's nothing
community.
wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that because it's like, come on, come on with us, have some fun, do a show, do a couple of shows. But then they just don't stick and stay because they don't see the depth. And there are other people who come to us and they get that they feel the call. That's the only way I can think of it. It's like there's something in this community that speaks to them or calls to them where they find an anchor or they find a home. And it's different for everybody. I mean, people come because like you said, they feel like they don't fit in or they feel like they're not accepted. And Rocky is a place where everybody's accepted. I mean, look at me. I am not a young person, and yet here I am with all these young people, and everybody accepts that, you
Yeah,
know,
and I
I'm
love
I'm
it.
here, I'm gonna do the thing, I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna do the part, I'm gonna do the show.
Mm.
And nobody has ever said to me, you are too old to be doing this.
No, never.
You know, we're going to have this age cutoff limit. Like and we have an age limit for, you have to be at least this age to perform, but we're not going to say, okay, when you hit this age, we're cutting you off, grandma, you're done. You come back.
No, it's
Nobody
not that.
says that.
No.
We don't say you're too fat to be here, or you're too skinny to be here, or you got too many tattoos to be here, you don't have enough tattoos to be here.
That would be
We
wild.
don't put we don't put these caveats onto things. We
No.
just say, can you show up? Can you perform? Can you do the thing? Can you get the costume? Can you show up for the rehearsal? Can you meet all the terms? And do you want to do this? And can you be enthusiastic? And can you be a participant? Because I do think, we have the guests and then we
Yes.
have the people who just they jump in the middle of the boat,
Yeah.
and they land on their feet and they grab on with both hands and they're like, nope, I'm here and I'm not letting go. And they become the stickers and stayers of the community because something speaks to them about this, not just the movie. It's not just the movie, it's the community around being a cast performer that speaks to them and feeling like I found we used to talk some years ago about gotta find your tribe. You gotta find your tribe, you gotta find your squad or whatever. Like, but that's what you do. You're finding your family and you find the place where, I think there's a lot of people in Rocky who've got trauma.
Oh,
You know,
I don't want to
I think there's a
stereotype,
lot.
but yeah.
I'm not trying to stereotype at all,
But
but I just think there's a
no,
lot of
but
people who
mhm,
have had trauma of
yeah.
some type and they're looking for a place where you know they're not going to be judged for that,
Mm,
um and where they have an outlet
yeah.
for that,
Yeah. No,
you
I
know and
agree.
you can because when I think there is a correlation between creativity and trauma, because if you look at a lot of the really great artists all throughout history, you'll find a lot of them had some kind of traumatic event in their life or some trauma that happened to them in their life. And it can be, trauma comes in all different shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
So it can be small trauma, big trauma, this kind of trauma, that kind of trauma. And I think that, this is a great catharsis for a lot of people to to get rid of some of this negative energy by filling it up with positive energy
Yeah.
and and just kind of getting out there and saying, what, I'm just putting it all out there, all of this energy just out there on this show and out there in this performance. And then you get back all of this amazing energy from the audience and all of this amazing energy from each other. And I think that's why we hate for it to be just two shows. Because it's like, that's not enough. We need more. We need more, 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 more.
Oh, yeah, I do miss the weekly
I
shows to
do
some
too.
extent.
Even though I'm not a youngster, I do. I would love I would love it if we could do.
Oh no. Hello? Oh no. All right, and we're back to recording. Beautiful. But yeah, no, I would love to do like weekly shows again to some extent. I probably wouldn't like to do them personally every week, but like twice a week, every weekend, would love to
Yeah,
do
like
that.
maybe once a month, twice a month.
Yeah, I think regular shows are healthy, especially during like the summertime, because a lot that's what really like when we were doing shows at the picture show, that's when we get a lot of people in was starting in the summer because
Yeah,
kids didn't have anything to do. They come out,
yeah,
have a good time. And yeah, I always made the summers to go forward to something like that. That's when we made the biggest impact on like the community around us, I would say. Okay, let me see what we got. We're gonna go with do you have any memory in particular from doing Rocky Horror that sticks out? Like for me, for example, I had this one instance where we did a version initiation, and it was "Bitch Better Have My Twinkies."
yes.
So, so we all had to. So they got like a bunch of guys from cast to stand out on stage, and we had to hold Twinkies in between our legs, and then the virgins would eat the Twinkies.
Oh dear God, can't do that anymore.
No, God, no. Then they had to eat the Twinkie and then say, "I'm a bitch and I like Twinkies." They had to do all of this. This was a thing. Um, this is all fully volunteer. And at the end of it, I had this girl who's like roughly the same age as me when I was like 16 or something. And her mom came up to me after the initiation and was like, I am so glad you took my daughter's virginity. And I feel I feel like out of context, that sounds so
Yeah,
wrong.
that doesn't yeah, that doesn't sound good.
But like for that, to this day, that is still one of the one of the clearest memories to me that sticks out, just because of how only in that type of setting would that be something that you would hear and be like, "Oh, I'm so happy I could have done that for you."
Um, well, I guess the story I already told you about performing at the USF Ball in the Mall that first time where it was just us without the film and how the audience reacted to that. That's a really positive and powerful memory. And the our our prior director and producer Cash, who would come up to me after the Halloween shows and tell me, um, and I'm not saying this to brag, but it really touched my heart because sometimes I feel like, Crim's just is that character that's the transition scenes between the big numbers and kind of gets lost a little bit. But Cash would come up to me and go, you are just so fucking good at this. And you're my favorite Crim ever. And he would mean that,
Yeah.
and that just would really that touched my heart a lot. And he was always trying to get me, he would joke and because I'd say, is there anything else you want me to be doing? And he goes, yeah, Frank. I'd be like, that's not happening. That's not happening. I- but he was just very encouraging of me. So that meant a lot, and just having that kind of encouragement and support because again, I'm not a young person, and I'm not I was coming back after a very long hiatus, and the fact that he welcomed me with open arms to the Tampa Theater Show meant a lot. Really
Amazing.
meant a lot.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's awesome. I think you're fantastic, Graham. Honestly,
Well,
generally,
thank you. I appreciate that.
top tier, S plus plus. um, so we're getting towards like the end of the
Okay.
interview. I got a couple more, and then I can let you
Yeah.
go. So you've come from an era from the early days of Rocky Horror, especially in like the Tampa Bay area, and now you're active in the more present era. Is there any differences, or do you feel like the community itself is still the same when it comes to Rocky?
No, I think been evolution. I think that, well, obviously, a lot of the AP lines evolve over time because a lot of them are pop culture references.
Hmm.
So we would yell things that were whatever was going on in the culture at the time, and then those fall off and fade away.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know when it happened that they started referring to Janet as a slut because back in the day, when they would say her name, we would just go Weiss, like bag of snakes. I don't know when the slut thing started. Um, but yeah, it was just Weiss. And there were different, different lines that we yelled that were you would only understand them at the time because they were like either we were making fun of commercials or we were making fun of politicians or making fun of whatever was going on in the country at the time. Um, but I think that the community has gotten both meaner and more sensitive, which is kind of odd.
Okay.
Um, because some of the stuff that gets yelled, there's some of it I can't. There's some of the things that they yell, I don't like.
Oh.
It's like that's just harsh. Um, I don't think white people think that's funny.
Oh.
And then there's things that are well, there were some terrible. There were no, there were, but we had our own terrible things that um when Janet is in the bedroom and Frank knocks on the door and she would say, "Who is it?" People used to yell Ted Bundy.
Oh my God. Holy shit.
Yeah, and that's bad. That was a bad one. But that was, but that was a thing of the time. And so a lot of the AP lines I think are like zeitgeist of the time,
Hmm.
right? Um, you know, it's terrible.
Oh my
But then
goodness.
they went ahead and did the execution, and people stopped yelling that because he was dead. Um, and then people yell stuff now. There's the one about the abortion crawling back, and that's to me that's just horrid. I hate that one. Like, oh, plus it goes on way too long,
It is a
and
very long AP
so it's not
line.
to me. It's like if it takes that long, it's not funny. Um, so, uh, but at the same time, I don't know. There's I've seen some chatter on the webs from some of the different communities about how they view the film now, which kind of begs the question of, well, if you think the film is thus and so, why are you shadow casting it?
Hmm.
Like, why are you a participant in the community if you think the film is bad?
Oh, they think
Um,
it's bad.
that's some things that I find a little confusing because um, people feel like Frank. I've seen chatter to the effect that he um, forces himself on Janet instead of getting her consent. And just the same thing with Brad and some other things.
I
And it's sort of like, okay, but if you really feel that way, why would you be a part of a community? Why would you be a shadow caster for a film like
I think
that?
that's a very strange way to interpret that scene. That's very.
I kind of agree myself. And I know things were different. And when this movie was made in 74, it was a different worldview. It was a very different worldview. And it's not the same today.
Hmm.
Um, but I think people's perspectives and sensitivities change over time.
Hmm.
And people find some of the stuff in the movie questionable.
Hmm.
Um, but I think sometimes they don't get a lot of the stuff in the movie because they need to take a minute and understand like the films that Richard O'Brien took some of this stuff from, you know,
Yeah.
um, or some of the background that he put into the writing.
Mm.
Um, I don't, I want, and I wonder, this is just a me thing, if they know why they're yelling certain things.
I I had like a weird revelation about that recently. I didn't we were doing a prop scene Q run through last night, and one of the people were doing AP lines like we do because we're watching the movie just because, right? And I don't think they're ever on the Cheap Little Punks cast, but they were saying some of the AP lines, and like in my head, I'm like, that's so crazy that these lines are still existing, like things that we would do just to be
Yeah,
like it, just because we are being idiots. There's no
yeah,
context for it whatsoever. Like they have stuck in the line, like it, which is like one of them was like, I don't care where he comes on, so I get my money. Like
yes,
that's something that we would just yell out because we were just being idiots, and yet
yeah.
somehow that's still like echoing in there, and it's like that's so crazy to me because I'm like, does anybody even have context for where this stuff is and like where this stuff comes from anymore, or is it just like
I don't, yeah, and I don't know. It's like somebody says something and then they think it's funny, so somebody else will pick it up and say it, and it just like, it kind of starts a trend. But I think some of the other things is like I wonder, do they know why he calls him Dr. Von Scott? Do they know why they do the Nazi references? Do they know why Magenta even says it's a triumph of your will? Do they even know why what he's the things that Richard O'Brien was like picking up and putting into all of that?
I like the
Um,
subtext?
yeah. And I
Huh.
think sometimes and like they don't think they then people get angry because they're like, oh no, I have a Nazi in this movie. And it's like, oh, but okay, he's saying that he's one of the paperclip Nazis that
Hmm.
we brought over at the end of World War II. The US brought over a certain number of Nazi scientists,
Yes.
good Nazis, and they were called Operation Paperclip, and they changed their names a lot of the time. And a lot of the stuff, with Rocky Horror is that these people are aliens. They're aliens. So it's been, and in the when you look at the movies, all these movies that Richard O'Brien is referencing in science fiction double feature, they're movies from the 50s, just after the Roswell incident, where they had the alien spacecraft crash. So very possibly all of this stuff kind of it makes all this soup. And then he's making all these oblique little references to stuff. So Frank and Riff Raff and Magenta may have been here since Roswell. And,
That's
you
an
know,
amazing interpretation.
and like I always tell people, look at the table. Why do you think there's so many forks on the table? They don't know how to set a table. They have no idea how to do
Anyway.
any of this stuff because they're not from here. And that's why it's so weird. That's why there's celery in the flower vase. They don't know how to do this.
Wait. There's celery in the flower
Yeah,
vase?
I think there's celery is like that's why they say the line I don't told you I don't like celery because there's celery in the middle of the table as a decoration because they don't know that it's food because they're aliens. So it's like all this stuff he's trying to make all these subtle references to these back to these films that are in the opening song where it's all about aliens invading the earth and trying to disguise themselves and the Transylvanians are all aliens too and they're among us and but they're trying to be like us but do they know how to be like us? Clearly they don't because they don't even know how
Huh.
to set the table. Why does Dr. Scott have so many forks? All those different drinking vessels and you know and they're eating, they don't have a problem with eating Eddie.
Yeah, that's just meat to them.
No
Yeah.
problem with that. So the whole thing is it's not just for comedic effect, but he's trying to very subtly say, hey, these guys maybe have been here for a while,
Huh.
you know. They've maybe been here for some time and they still haven't figured out how to live on Earth. And they're just living in this castle, which apparently nobody has ever noticed in this wherever their Denton is, if it's in Denton, Texas, or Denton, Ohio, or wherever. No one's ever noticed there's a castle there.
It's just a castle. It's
So
just there.
it's just a castle, a
It's
castle,
just
and
there.
these
You
people
know.
have been living there, not figuring out how to live like Earthlings. So it's a lot more subtle humor in this thing that than you realize. They haven't just recently shown up. Is the whole
Oh,
thing.
I guess I have never really thought about it like that. There is a sense of absurdity with like a lot of
Yes.
their behavior throughout the entire film.
And
That
quite likely the butler and the maid were in that castle and they killed them, and those are their clothes, and that's why they're in such bad shape. Also because they've been wearing them since 1947.
And then just gradually just been adopting people as they come along if they really like them, or Frank shows some infatuation with them. They're like, oh, you can stay.
Stay. Sure, maybe you can help us figure out how to set a table. Celery is not a decoration.
Well, Columbia is not a trans or not from an
Oh, no,
alien.
Columbia and Eddie were from Earth.
And she's just
So
like, yeah, that's how you do it. Like, never.
he's just hanging out.
He's just hanging out, trying to have a good
He's just
time.
hanging out.
That was another thing I kind of thought about the movie the other day when I was watching it. Like, that is a very big mural of Eddie that she has in her bedroom.
Yes, it's a blown up photograph. Yes, it is.
I'm like, how long does that take to build up? Like, that's
Sasquatch?
yeah, that's
Like Sasquatch?
like I know you guys have history, but like that is a big
Seriously.
ass mural.
Yes, like just a wee little bit obsessed.
No, I think that thank you for that. I appreciate that. All right, let's
Well,
see.
when you're sitting up there as Krim, you got a lot of time on your hands to think.
That's fair. That's fair. You know what? You're not wrong. I've noticed something with myself, at least, like since I've been watching the movie a little bit more from like a techie perspective and like taking a real step back and just like looking at the movie objectively. I've noticed so much more from the film over these last like couple of years than I've ever noticed when I was originally doing it.
Yeah, you'll see that. You'll notice a lot of little things as you watch it, like little different kind of tiny things. And you'll be like, oh my God, I never noticed that before. Oh my God, I never saw that before.
Yeah.
The more times you watch it, and if you really sit and watch it and you look at all the little subtle stuff going on in the background.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm gonna do that a little bit more often, or at least try to. I can't do it right now. We got a show coming up, so I gotta be
Right.
on point. But afterwards, after I can probably try to fit something in. That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because yeah, it's little subtle things.
uh,
All right.
All right, relax.
Well, I thought that maybe you were having therapy.
No, it's Dexter. He's the kind of therapy.
Next,
Hi, Ricky.
So you're
that cook.
I'm about to start
gonna
it.
have to edit the recording now.
I got Danimal for that. If not, we probably keep it in. It feels original. I like it. um,
This is my interview about Rocky. You're fine.
but I am liking the book so far.
Okay. He is like,
Good.
Once I give it a full read through, I would like to pick you and Teddy's brains about it. um, well, is it clearly you got things going on, so I won't hold you much longer. But
that's okay. You have another, you said you had one more question.
I have one more question because I found like I thought this would be a cool way to end every like interview.
Okay.
What is your
Hit me.
favorite callback line?
Oh gosh. And that varies over time. And I honestly don't know if I could pick just one.
Mhm.
Um,
You don't have to. You can spiral as many as you want. Like I can like there's like obviously if you go like F when Frank says UC, K spells fuck. But my friend Danny, she was a wizard when it came to AP lines. She would spell fire and then
fire truck.
TRUC
Yeah,
fire truck
we
and
used to do that. We used to actually now back in the day because we were the UC players, we would yell, what is the best cast? And he would go UC.
oh that's awesome. What?
But I really like it when Rocky's getting out of the tank and people start chanting Imhotep, Imhotep, Imhotep. That is one of my favorites. And I do like it. Ricky does this the best when Columbia is screaming at the end of Hot Patootie,
Mhm.
and he'll go, okay, 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 I'll use more lube. But Ricky has to do it because his is the only voice that will carry loud enough. And then when when Brad says, "What have you done with Janet?" and Ricky will yell, fucked her brains out. But again, because he has such a loud voice,
Mhm.
he can do it from the back of the theater and it will carry. Yes, thank you. He when they do hot, when Frank does the electric knife,
Mhm.
he'll yell, "Hot patootie, cut my soul, serve me up with a dinner roll."
Yeah. Hop a 2D, he got myself.
But I also really liked right after Fight Club came out and they started doing when Frank would come out of the freezer, his name was
That's
Robert
Robert
Paulson.
Paulson.
I really like that one too.
I like that one. That's a solid one.
Yeah.
We used to do
So
that
I
one.
don't think I have a favorite one, but I there are so many fun ones that I like.
That's good. No, I think that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for all of those. I appreciate it.
But I do like because I'm the only one who gets to do it when we do when I get to say he was a low down cheap little punk and I get to go oi 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 because I'm the only one who's allowed to do that on stage.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. This has been such a pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time to
No
have this
problem. I
conversation
enjoyed
with
it
me.
very much. Enjoyed
Yeah.
having a chance to talk to you.
Hey, thank you. I hope you have a lovely evening. Please tell everybody I
Too.
said hi. I hope you have fun in
I
St.
will.
Augustine.
Thank you. You
Hey,
take care and feel better.
you too. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.